This story is about a human student who shocks his alien classmates when his arm is sliced off during training, and he reacts like it's nothing. The last simulation of the orbital morning was always the worst. Everyone knew it. After 8 grueling hours of zero-G maneuver drills, shield modulation theory, and cross-species tactical negotiations that always ended in someone crying, usually a Drelak, no one wanted to face the death drones. The Drelak stood uncertainly, and the seaman who was bound to protect him in any way stepped into the fray and took him in his arms with no one to protect him and no one to protect the drones. No one wanted to face the death drone, especially not when Lieutenant Commander Harvo reset the difficulty to level 8 without telling anyone. The lights in Simulation Chamber 3 dimmed, leaving a soft violet glow from the containment walls. A whirring noise signaled the reactivation of the sentry drones, 3 of them this time, all buzzing in a tight orbit above the cadets. Drew adjusted the sleeve on his left arm and exhaled slowly through his nose. The group was jittery. The Threshcon twins kept flicking their bioluminescent eye flaps, a telltale sign of stress. Gorik, the blue-scaled Jaltorian, hovered near the rear of the group, tail twitching like a nervous cat. Even the normally stoic Ferenian ambassador's child, Kale, had his tentacled mouth pulled tight in concentration. "Stay in formation," Harvo's voice crackled through the intercom, half static, half disdain. "Engage drones using non-lethal tactics only. This is a hostage extraction simulation. You know what to do." The drones launched their first volley, blunted impact pulses meant to simulate stun rounds. Drew ducked one, spun under another, and motioned for Kale and the twins to flank left. It was all choreography by now. They'd done the drills 100 times. Then something went wrong. The drone on the right stuttered mid-air. Its rotors hiccuped, an angry whine building in its core. Instead of discharging its mock weapon, a rotary blade flicked out from its underside, bright with a plasma sheen, definitely not part of the program. Drew was in its path before anyone could shout a warning. The blade made a sickening shink as it met resistance. A blur of red-orange sparks filled the air. Drew spun with the force, half pivoting on one foot before crashing to the padded floor. Something thudded nearby. A twitching, black-gloved hand rolled twice, then came to a stop against the base of the observation wall. Kale shrieked. Gorik bolted behind the console stack. One of the twins collapsed outright, all 6 knees buckling. A pale green Zentari cadet fumbled with a medkit, flinging vials and gauze in a frenzy, his voice a rising screech. Drew sat up slowly, grimacing. The drone sparked once more before a containment field dropped around it, freezing it mid-air. Harvo swore off mic. Someone was going to answer for this, but all eyes were on Drew. He looked down at the clean sever near his left shoulder. The sleeve of his academy jacket had been scorched open. Faint curls of smoke rose from the damaged joint. Again," he muttered, plucking at the release catch on his shoulder. Survey Drew's face, and his skull rose from the damaged joint. Again?" he muttered, plucking at the release catch on his shoulder. Faint curls of smoke rose from the damaged joint. With a gentle pop, the stump of his arm slid free of its synthetic sheath, revealing a smooth metal port with blackened connectors and a distinct whiff of burnt plastic. "It's just a scratch," he muttered. Silence. Horrified silence. Someone dropped the emergency defibrillator. The clatter echoed. Drew looked up. Every alien face was frozen in disbelief, panic, horror. Wait, it's not real," he said quickly, raising his right hand. "That was a prosthetic, it's fine. I've got a backup in the locker." He moved to stand. That, apparently, was the final straw. The Zentari vomited in his own mouth. Gorik let out a keening sound and ducked even lower. Kyle stared, unblinking. Drew blinked, genuinely confused, until the realization hit him like a sidekick from a training droid. Oh, right. They didn't know. He sighed, picking up the twitching hand and tapping the servo joint until it went limp. I lost the real one 5 years ago. Structural collapse during an evac op on Arion V. This is Gen 6 prosthetic tech. Not cheap, but handy in training simulations. Pun not intended. Still, no one moved. So he did what any tired, slightly annoyed human would do after having their day nearly ruined by an old injury and a dozen species worth of medical panic. He rolled his eyes, shuffled over to the nearest tool cabinet, and opened the top drawer. Anyone got a screwdriver? Socket head if possible, left joints fried again. I swear, if the warranty doesn't cover plasma damage, I'm gonna scream. That's when half the class collectively gasped. Kale took a halting step forward, voice cracking. Your limb? You detached it and you are asking for tools. Yup, Drew said, popping the damaged shoulder joint open. Because if I leave it like this, it's gonna seize up, and then I'll need a whole new rotator core. And those aren't cheap. You are leaking the... Zentari stammered, gesturing to a trail of dark gray fluid. Hydraulic gel, not blood. No pain receptors in this model either, Drew said, though it does tingle when it overheats. And not in a fun way. Another long silence. Harvo, finally regaining control, cut in over the intercom. Simulation paused. Cadet Drew, report to engineering for damage assessment. All others, simulation terminated. Debrief in 60 minutes. That'll give you time to digest what just happened. No one moved. Again. Drew gave up on the screwdriver and instead began unscrewing the entire socket casing by hand. It hissed slightly as he twisted it, gears disengaging with faint resistance. See? He said, holding the part aloft. Not a scratch on me, just fried alloy. Then, under his breath, well, that and my pride, but we'll ignore that. Kale edged closer, fascinated horror etched across his rubbery features. How many humans walk among us missing pieces? Drew chuckled once, dryly. Probably more than you think. Some of us even do it voluntarily. Ever hear of limb augmentation athletes? Kale swayed faintly. You remove parts on purpose? Drew nodded, sitting down and beginning to pull off the glove from the prosthetic hand. Yep. For sport. For convenience, for survival. Humans aren't squeamish about modification. Some get whole new spines just to survive planetary shifts. Gorik made a noise like a blender having a nervous breakdown. The simulation chamber slowly cleared as alien cadets stumbled out in a daze, whispering, shooting glances back at Drew as if he might start dismantling other body parts. As the door slid shut behind the last student, Drew exhaled and rubbed his temples with his remaining hand. By the time he arrived in the engineering bay, word had already spread. 2 first-year cadets from the mechanics corps stood by the tool lockers pretending to inventory wrenches while blatantly watching him. One of them, a long-limbed Hithari with rotating pupils, whispered into a communicator without breaking eye contact. The other just kept looking between Drew and the detached prosthetic arm in his hand like it was a ticking explosive. Relax, Drew said, placing the limb carefully onto the workbench. It doesn't bite. Unless you program it to, I guess. That got no laugh. Not even a blink. Chief Engineer Lawson, a stocky woman with oil stains embedded deep into her skin and zero tolerance for nonsense, entered from the side alcove with a diagnostic scanner already powered up. Come here, Drew. Sit. And stop terrifying the juniors. I didn't say anything yet. Doesn't matter. You showed up holding your own arm like a sandwich. That's enough. Drew sat obediently as Lawson waved the scanner across the connector at his shoulder. The screen blinked with a series of yellow warning codes. Mild connector scorching. Servo coil melted. Joint ring warped. Again, she muttered, tapping in a repair requisition. You ever think about a heat dampening mod? I tried one last year. It interfered with magnetic grip functions. Lawson snorted. You want grip or you want not fried? You don't get both at that price point. She handed him a nutrient pouch while she prepped the backup arm from storage. Drew accepted it with a grunt. The pouch said chicken, but tasted more like wet gauze. Still, he needed the calories. As she worked, Lawson tilted her head at him. I heard your class imploded. Some kid fainted? Threshcon twin, Yillow, I think. They don't handle trauma well. Apparently, neither does the Zentari. Did you know Gordonis from Xenopsych asked for a full briefing on prosthetics policy in mixed species training? Drew rubbed his eyes. Great. Lawson chuckled. Don't take it too hard. Most species here come from high-integrity biology cultures. Injuries usually catastrophic. Regrowth tech still limited for them. They see someone lose a limb and stay conscious, let alone joke about it, it hits them sideways. I didn't joke. You asked for a screwdriver while holding your own wrist. Okay, that's fair. By the time Lawson finished aligning the new socket, the arm clicked into place with a satisfying hum. He flexed the fingers. Smooth rotation, slight stiffness, no overheating. Outside the bay, word kept spreading. Maxone dame, Astoni, Memamori. Drew's schedule resumed with a multi-species cooperation module. The moment he entered lecture room 4B, every conversation dropped to a hush. He took his seat near the middle row. Nobody sat near him. Not out of dislike, more like strategic awe. Professor Calithrix, a gelatinous swirl of colors who taught through light emissions and resonant vibrations, paused mid-lecture and said, Cadet Drew, are you stable? Mechanically, yes. Emotionally, that depends on if lunch has mystery meat again. There was a moment of awkward flickering. A few cadets nervously copied down the joke, unsure if it was part of the lesson. After class, Cale approached with an earnest expression. Drew, may I ask a question? Sure. Cale looked around to make sure no one was listening. What else can you remove? Drew blinked. What? I mean, human physiology. If you can lose an arm and remain unshaken, is your species modular? Are you part machine? Drew laughed, short, surprised but genuine. Not really. I mean, I have a synthetic limb. Some folks have ocular replacements, organ substitutes, even neural implants. But no, we're not built to come apart. We just make do when something breaks. Cale absorbed that slowly, eyes wide. But it looked so normal, natural, like losing part of yourself was no different than losing a boot. Trust me, Drew said quietly. The first time it happened, it wasn't. It hurt. It was terrifying. It took me 6 months to walk without phantom limb pain, and over a year to stop dreaming it was still there. Cale looked genuinely shaken now. So why act like it's nothing? Because it's not the end. Not anymore. We adapt. Humans are stubborn that way. If something gets taken, we find a way to keep going. Crying won't reattach the damn thing. Cale studied him in silence, then asked the one question Drew hadn't expected. Are you proud of that? Drew thought about it, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I am. Cale touched one of his own limbs, tentacles folded around his midsection in something like discomfort. My kind can't do that. If we lose a major appendage, it alters our neural lattice permanently. We don't rebuild. That's why it shook you so much. Cale nodded. We thought you were dying. Then you asked for tools. Later that evening, the mess hall was quieter than usual. Drew sat alone for the first time in months. Not out of exclusion, just confusion. Everyone stared. Few dared approach. That changed when Gorik sat down across from him, tray full of carefully portioned insect protein. I have researched your prosthetic limb technology, Gorik said in a clipped tone. Your species has many varieties. Some are decorative. Drew raised an eyebrow. You saying I should get flame decals? Possibly, but I wish to understand your maintenance process. You remove the limb often? Only when damaged, or for cleaning. Cleaning? Yes, Gorik, even machine arms get sweaty. Gorik tapped a note into his tablet. Fascinating. The ice was breaking. By the next orbital day, Drew had a line outside his dorm room. Students from every species on Thraxis Prime wanted to see the arm. Inspect it, understand it. He obliged, carefully unscrewing components, pointing out servo groups, power cores, tendon replicators. It became an unofficial class. Even Lawson stopped by and grinned at the impromptu engineering lecture. It wasn't until a Nervaki student asked him if he missed his real arm that things grew still. Drew paused. Yes, every day, he said quietly. But I'm not weaker because of it. Just changed. Cale stepped forward then, holding something in a translucent pouch. I made this, he said. It's a ceremonial sleeve cover, from my people, to honor a lost limb. Drew accepted it, unsure of what to say. Thanks, he whispered. Do not thank me, Cale said solemnly. Thank your screwdriver. And just like that, the tension broke. The room erupted in laughter. The next week, Drew was scheduled for physical evaluation, a routine check for joint calibration, muscular balance, and reflex syncing. Normally, it was a 10-minute ordeal followed by half an hour of paperwork no one read. This time, it took over 2 hours. The chief medical examiner, Dr. Tella, a serpentine Elvari with a calm demeanor and 1,000 diagnostic questions, insisted on a full neuromuscular integration scan. This is a rather popular arm, she said, not entirely sarcastically. Half the station has filed formal requests to study its specs. Drew lay on the scanning table, wires running from his prosthetic into a tangled grid of sensors. People have got to stop calling it the arm like it's Excalibur. Taylor narrowed her eyes. It is the arm that caused 3 panic attacks and resulted in your academy file being upgraded to intercultural risk level 2. Wait, risk level what? Nothing to worry about. It's mostly bureaucratic. You're now officially flagged for potentially causing existential distress. That's actually a badge of honor for most humans. Oh, great, Drew muttered. I'm an emotional hazard. The tests ran another hour. Motor control perfect. Reflex transmission delay less than 1 millisecond. Pressure sensitivity slightly degraded but within normal wear levels. Afterward, Taylor gave him a printed summary and a warning. You should prepare for more questions. Several departments have submitted ethics queries. They want to know if partial cybernetic integration disqualifies a human from being fully organic. Drew blinked. Wait, they think I'm not human anymore? She tilted her head. Some students have begun referring to you as the modula, in a semi-reverent way. Wonderful. Things escalated faster than he'd expected. First came the interviews. Then the recording crews. The interspecies communications lab invited him to a round table where a Drelak philosopher asked him if humans viewed the body as optional. No, not optional, just negotiable, Drew said, trying to find words that didn't sound glib. Cale was there too. He'd become something of a translator, both linguistically and socially. He often rephrased Drew's bluntness into something more digestible for species that valued slow, ceremonial speech. When Drew mentioned phantom pain, Cale described it as the echo of a limb's spirit refusing silence. Somehow that made the room fall respectfully quiet. 2 days later, the history department put up a full exhibit, Human Adaptation Through Injury. It included archival footage of early prosthetics' clunky wooden legs, WRI-era hooks, even early myoelectric limbs. Students wandered through in stunned silence. Some cried. Others left gifts at the exhibit's entrance. It got to be too much. Drew skipped his next lecture, holed up in the gravity garden under the shade of a Terran oak. For once, it was quiet. Then he heard the familiar scuff of Cale's tread. I figured I'd find you here, Kale said. Word travels fast. We share your location in the student net. It was meant for safety reasons, Drew groaned. Remind me to revoke that. Kale sat cross-legged beside him, tentacles folding neatly into his lap. Why are you hiding? I'm not hiding. You're under a tree. I like trees. You're sulking. Drew leaned back, eyes closed. I didn't ask to be some kind of icon. I didn't even do anything impressive. My arm came off. That's it. Kale was quiet for a moment. You misunderstand. It's not the injury. It's your reaction. Most of us live in fear of disfigurement, of alteration. You stood up and asked for a tool. I didn't stand up right away. I was a little stunned. But you recovered, efficiently, with clarity. Drew opened his eyes and looked at him. You're saying people admire that? Terrifyingly so. The wind rustled through the synthetic leaves. Drew thought for a while. I think people should see more of the truth, the messy parts, the rehab, the nightmares, the part where I spent 3 months needing help to tie my boots. Kale nodded. Then show them. The next morning, Drew brought a data stick to communications. It was filled with videos from his recovery, most of them raw. No filters, no edits. Some shaky footage of him falling during physical therapy, clips of him yelling at an uncooperative robotic grip, a tearful recording he made one night after thinking he felt his fingers, only to remember they were gone. He titled it, It's Not Just a Scratch. Within 3 hours of uploading it to the Academy network, it had been viewed over 70,000 times. Students messaged him from across the orbital campus. Some shared their own injuries, both visible and hidden. One Zentari confessed to using a lung implant after a gas exposure accident. A Jaltorian cadet showed her restructured hip. For the first time, the Academy's elite students admitted they, too, had limits. Drew was invited to speak. He declined the formal offer, but agreed to a more casual forum. No podium, just a circle of chairs in the gymnasium. What should we call this event? Kale asked. Drew shrugged. Amputees Anonymous? Kale looked horrified. Kidding, call it something honest. Broke but not broken, maybe? That became the title. The forum drew hundreds. As they spoke, shared stories, even cracked jokes, something shifted across campus. Fear gave way to curiosity. Curiosity softened into understanding. Suddenly, the idea of rebuilding, re-engineering, modifying, it wasn't monstrous. It was human. Near the end of the evening, Gorick stood up and asked the question everyone had tiptoed around. If you had the choice to go back to never lose the arm, would you? Drew didn't answer immediately. Then, yeah, I would. He let the words settle. But I didn't get that choice, so I made this one instead, and I'm okay with that. Kale placed the ceremonial sleeve on the arm again, this time in front of everyone. Then, we honor the path you chose, and for the first time since that faulty drone nearly cooked his prosthetic in half, Drew smiled without hesitation. 2 weeks after the simulation mishap, the Thoraxis Prime cadet schedule resumed full pace. The buzz over Drew's prosthetic had shifted from panicked curiosity to structured inquiry. Students now formed long lines for elective courses in comparative biomechanics, and the Academy had officially added a human resilience seminar to its rotating lectures. Drew's name wasn't listed, but everyone knew who started it. The curiosity didn't fade, it simply matured. Gone were the startled questions and whispered guesses about whether he could detach his head too. Now it was discussions about threshold pain, muscle memory, neural adaptation. Cadets who once thought of flesh as sacred began debating the philosophy of synthetic augmentation over dinner. But Drew didn't feel like a pioneer. He still had to do his drills, ace his coursework, and remember to charge the backup power cells on his left arm every third day. and none of that was glamorous. The training drone incident had earned him mandatory follow-up simulations. This time, all safety parameters were triple-checked. He walked into Simulation Chamber 5 with Kale, Gorik, and Yilo, the same group from that disastrous session, only now things were different. "All right," Harvo barked from the intercom. "This one's a tactical pressure sim. No real drones, just projections and decision-making. Try not to lose any limbs today." Yilo twitched nervously. "That was a joke, yes?" Drew gave a dry look. "One of his better ones, actually." The sim activated, and a holographic battlefield emerged. Civilians trapped under debris, structural collapse zones mapped in red, hostiles with mock energy weapons patrolling. A timed escape window counted down in bright yellow above them. "Coordinate evac paths," Drew ordered, stepping in to roll smoothly. "Kale, barrier readings? Unstable at quadrant 3, recommend reroute. Gorik, mimic crossfire. Yilo, cover civis with kinetic shield and stay low." There was no panic this time. No shrieking. No fainting. The team flowed like water, each decision building on the next. When the timer ended, they'd evacuated every target and neutralized all simulated threats with less than 2 seconds to spare. As the projection faded, Kale looked over with something like pride. "Statistically optimal," he said. "Best score this semester." "Yeah," Drew said, flexing the prosthetic fingers. "And everyone kept their limbs." Harvo's voice crackled again. "Don't get smug. I've seen cadets flunk 6 weeks after a record run." "Looking forward to it, sir," Drew muttered. After the session, they headed to the academy courtyard. It was open to the stars, shielded only by a transparent canopy that shimmered with deflection fields. The artificial night sky showed dozens of constellations from different homeworlds, all stitched together in a shared map. They sat near the edge fountain, Kale, Gorik, Yilo, and Drew legs stretched, training jackets half unzipped in the cool recycled air. "Back home," Gorik said, unprompted, "a prosthetic limb is a mark of deep shame. It means the body failed, that the ancestors look away." Drew turned to him, curious. "Do you still believe that?" The Jaltorian shook his head. "Not anymore. You function better with it than I do with both arms. And you teach with it. You answer every question without offense." "That's because if I don't," Drew said, "you ask weirder ones. Like when you wanted to know if my toenails grew differently." Gorik looked defensive. "Valid inquiry." Yilo looked between them. "My twin still thinks you are part machine." "I mean, that's not technically wrong," Drew said, wiggling the mechanical fingers. "But I'm not a cyborg warlord, if that's what they're thinking." "They are," Drew groaned. "Of course." Kale stood up then and held out a thin datapad. "This came for you, official courier." Drew opened it. The message header read, "Intercultural Exchange Initiative nominee, Earth invitation pending." "They want me to represent the Academy?" he asked, stunned. Kale nodded. "To speak about prosthetic integration and human adaptability. You're being asked to present to 5 planetary consortia." Drew read the message again, slower. "It's not because I'm special," he said. "It's because I lost an arm." "No," Kale replied. "It's because you didn't lose yourself." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt rooted, like something finished settling into place. Drew leaned back and stared at the stars. He hadn't asked for any of this. He never wanted the attention, the mythology, the strange, half-reverent glances from cadets who once couldn't even pronounce biomechatronics. No? But maybe the universe didn't care what you wanted. Maybe it just handed you a broken piece and waited to see what you'd build with it. Eventually, the courtyard lights dimmed as curfew approached. They stood, stretched, and walked back together, no speech, no ceremony, just quiet steps and the soft hum of Drew's mechanical shoulder catching up with the real one. Inside his quarters later, Drew removed the prosthetic gently. He placed it on the charger, wiped the socket clean, and sat on his bunk. His real shoulder ached faintly. It always did at the end of long days. He massaged the tissue around the port with slow, practiced pressure. He looked at the old ceremonial sleeve Cale had given him, still folded neatly beside his locker. Slowly he slid it on over the mechanical limb. It didn't feel like covering a scar anymore. It felt like carrying something forward. Tomorrow, there would be more questions. Probably new myths. Maybe even another nickname. But tonight, in the quiet hum of recycled air and distant star engines, Drew allowed himself to feel whole.